see more and more of this bike changing during the race. But I can tell you, when you're back here in the caravan, that's a lot of chaos.
Oh, that's great stuff, Steve. I mean, the Tour de France continues now to become such a technical event as well, and literally every tenth of a second could count. These are the two leaders. Way off the back is that Perot Cavendish group at 13 minutes. Remember, if we've worked it out right, they've got to be in less than 20 minutes after the winner today. Otherwise, they'll be literally kicked out of the Tour de France, outside the time limit. And it's slipping away, but I somehow feel it won't happen, but you never know. As we continue to race down, we're now left with 30 kilometers to go here. We're starting to get onto the beautiful banks of the Rhone River as we make our way, and we'll see plenty of that as we run down to the finish in Valence today. A magnificent river which goes right down here through Lyon as the peloton themselves. You can hear the crowds just cheering them every inch of the way. They're travelling at 54 kilometres an hour, and they're considerably quicker than the leaders at this point. These are the leaders. These are the two leaders. They are really now being chased down. I think Hejadal knows they're coming. 15 seconds of the gap. We'll see you in just a moment. Coming up on NBC SN, NASCAR Sprint Cup Series presented by Pixels, and don't forget it will come to you straight after today's coverage of the Tour de France, live from New Hampshire. NASCAR on NBC SN. Well, we're looking at the Rhone River here now. No, it's not France's longest river, but it is certainly stunningly beautiful. It goes down to the Mediterranean Sea. The peloton are here, and they are all together. Those two riders, when we went to break, had about 15 seconds. This is what happened. We made the left turn. They saw the peloton. They just decided it was the end, as they now all come down towards the finishing line together. Well, they're inside 25 kilometres to go now as we stay on the left bank of the River Rhone, but the finishing city is on the right bank, so we will switch over it very shortly.
Well, that's a fantastic chateau you can see in the top there, 14th century. The church in the middle, you might just have caught a glimpse of the church of Saint-Vincent, is originally 16th century. Thomas de Gent, well, he's been in the breakaway and he's been on the front of the main field. That's a rider in that red jersey. He's done a lot of pace-making for Lotto Soudal, but I have to admit, though, today, Phil, Team Europe car of France are really looking after the chances of their young sprinter, Brian Coquard.
It's got to be the best chance that Brian Coquard has had so far. Steady on now, because you almost hit the rider's wheel in front of him there.
Yep, you have to pay attention all the time. You really must. It's always a bad thing to look over your shoulder, especially when you're slipping back down through the main field.
So I had a phone call this morning with Matthew White, the sport director from Orca Green Edge, and he told me that on a normal day with a healthy Michael Matthews, it would have been a day for him. He would try the sprint, but he said he's coming back. He's coming back really good, but he's not there yet. So he said we focus on having somebody in a break, which they did with Adam Yates. But he also added, if it comes down to a sprint, Michael Matthews will have a close look to the front and see how he goes. But we're not going to put riders up there to chase. But Michael Matthews is coming back, and he might have a go at today's sprint.
That's good information, Jens, because Michael's had such an unfortunate tour. He was in that big crash which took out of the race Fabian Cancellara. In fact, he was the only one injured that didn't retire from the race. Everybody did. And there's the cruise ships here on the River Rhone.
You know, certainly all the other big teams they've got a lot of teammates up in the main field, Phil, so we'll see a lot of big lead-out trains organising. If Michael Matthews is going to try and do something for Australia and for Orica Green Edge, he really is going to have to freelance.
Well, the work being done now by three riders with top sprinters, Lotto Soudal, Team Europe car, and Katusha. Katusha works for Alexander Kristoff. He's had 18 wins this year, and he hasn't won a stage of the Tour de France, and he did win a stage 2, in fact, in last year's Tour de France. There is Andre Greipel as well. He's lining up for what could be his 3rd stage win today. So as we look at the face of Andre Greipel, let's go down inside the race and catch up with Steve Perino.
Well, as far as Alexander Kristoff, the Norwegian you were just talking about, there's a Norwegian commentator that works with me here on the motos, and he said there is so much pressure right now on the shoulders of Alexander Kristoff, and this day is looking like the one day where he might still have a chance. But he said since his great classic season earlier this spring, he hasn't quite had that same oomph. But again, talking to the director this morning, Jose Acevedo, they rested guys the last couple days. They have all their eggs in today's basket. This is a big one for the Norwegian.
It is indeed, and you know, I also think it's a big one for the French too, with Brian Cockard. This with Cavendish out of the way, that's why they're all going to think they can win. And Mark Cavendish off on the first climb today. He's in a group of 23 riders, and he's 11 minutes and 55 seconds behind, so he will not be challenging today. And that's why these sprinters teams are going to have their tails up today, because without Cavendish, the fastest finisher of them all, they can win, and they know it. And we're 22 kilometres out. Welcome back to the Tour de France closing stages now. Let's have a look how the contenders started the day. These are the top 5 riders in the event. Froome leading by 3 minutes 10. TJ Van Garderen slipped a little into 3rd place there, the man from Colorado. Plenty of time to recuperate that. We are now at 20 kilometres to go, and today we're going to get a first bunch sprint now for nearly 10 days, because this is a true sprinter's stage at the moment. Just to explain that because sprinting is so dangerous, the times are taken 3 kilometres out from the finish if there is an accident, so that the sprinters can get on with their job. Looking along the beautiful Rhone here now, as they're running up the left side of the Rhone. 36 degrees Celsius at the moment. That puts us around into the 90s Fahrenheit just now for these riders. 36 is about 97 degrees Fahrenheit, Paul. And that's the heat coming off the ground, don't forget it, but it isn't much cooler above.
No, it certainly isn't. As you can see, Thomas de Kent is the man doing all of the pacemaking. But there's 3 riders from 3 different sprinters teams sharing the pacemaking at the front. As we get closer to the finish, we'll start to see the pace lead-out lines getting themselves organised.
19 kilometres to go. Now the pressure is all on the Norwegian sprinter Alexander Kristoff. He's won 18 races this year, mostly at the start of the year in the Spring Classic region. Mark Cavendish having a great season. He's 14, but he's not even in the bunch now. Greipel won twice here and had 11 wins. He's on one of his best seasons.
Yeah, but Greipel has 2 stage victories at the Tour de France under his belt, and that will give him a lot more confidence. It will also give a lot of confidence to his team when it comes down to leading him out over the final few kilometres. Kristoff's team has not got the best organised lead-out train, because they're a little bit diversified in their aims at the Tour de France. They've got the King of the Mountains competition they're looking at, and of course they're looking at Kristoff to get a stage victory.
Here's a solar power farm here as we watch the peloton pass by. Well, the peloton in the charge of the sprinters teams, no surprises there, but what does the finish look like? Well, let's go and ask Steve Schlanger outside on the finish.
Well, Phil, it looks very fast, and that's what we expect here in just a little while with the bunch finish. And interesting, when I talked to the sprinters teams directors at the start earlier today, they were saying there's one particular spot to watch out for. It's this roundabout. At just inside of 300 meters to the finish, it's a right-hand turn, and they said you really need to be in the top 5 riders when you hit that roundabout if you want any chance of winning, because that's where you're really going to start to open up the sprint, and it's going to be about acceleration out of the turn that's really going to go a long way towards determining the winner. But boy, oh boy, if you're not in position at that roundabout, none of the directors were giving riders any chance to come from behind over the top and pull out a win.
So a sprint finish, Paul, around about 300 metres out. They come through on the inside of it. If you're not in amongst the front runners at that point, I don't think you'll get into it.
Well, that's the most important thing, but there are a number of roundabouts as well inside of the last 5 kilometres. You've got to be very careful and position yourself. And if you tend to lose your position inside of the last 5 or 6 kilometres, it's very difficult to replace yourself into the final sweeping bend. But I think it's a great finish for the sprinters this afternoon. It's nice and wide. Andre Greipel will be wondering if he can notch up win number 3. And I think the big advantage that Andre Greipel has got, Phil, is he's got a good lead-out train who have absolute confidence in him.
Well, we've gone back down the road over 12 minutes now. This is Jean-Christophe Perrault, bandaged up after that terrible crash he has, but he's determined to go on. And indications are he won't have a problem with the group being eliminated now at 12 minutes back and only 16 kilometres out. And Mark Cavendish here, well, he's just going to be feeling pretty upset about the fact he slipped off on the first climb of the day and they never came back. Because, and for the riders up front, they're licking their lips now because the best sprinter isn't going to be involved in the sprint finish.
Well, I think he gambled on the fact that the main field would take it easy once a breakaway had formed. I think he looked at the way the race was going to evolve, and unfortunately for him, I think he believed he could get dropped and catch back up into the race. That certainly is not the way the race unfolded because of the rather high speed we had over the first 2 hours of racing, close to 28, 29 miles an hour.
Well, the peloton are together now. And it's Thomas de Gent on the front at the moment. And there's a train coming up on the other side of the road now, as we've now got BMC taking charge. But who will win? Will Greipel get win number 3? Will Sagan get his first win of the year in the Tour de France? Not long now. Welcome back. The pack heading down towards the finish of the 15th stage of the Tour de France. We're making a very rare visit to the beautiful town of Valence on the River Rhône. And I can tell you that it's going to be a sprint royale. The one big sprinter, though, is riding over 12 minutes back. He got left behind at the start. Mark Cavendish, in a group of some 23 riders, won't be taking part in the sprint. And because of that, there's a lot of sprinters here believe that today it is their turn to win a stage of the Tour de France. And we're going to see quite a battle towards the line. There's the River Rhône, as we're now looking here at a number of teams trying to break in. As we look, let's have a look at the profile of the last 5 kilometres of the race, because these are always crucial and these are what the sprinters study. We're rising slightly up 105 feet as we run into those last 4 kilometres of the day. The little red triangle, that's 1 kilometre to go from the finish, but there is a tricky inside turn on a roundabout 300 metres from the line. Now, I think Team Sky coming up on the picture there to protect Chris Froome, but there's a lot of movement now. This is the back group we've gone back to, some 12 minutes down the road. They're just riding up towards the finish. It contains Jean-Christophe Perrault, the Frenchman, finished second last year and crashed. There's the holidaymakers on the Rhône River, about to have the best seat to watch the Tour de France go past. Here they come.
Yeah, just wondering at the way they'll get themselves organised. I just have a feeling today some of the sprinters might take some rather scary risks if they get themselves boxed in, because they know over the next week of racing, before we get to the Champs-Élysées, they don't have any chance at all. There are too many mountains in the way, so it's a really important sprint finish today for the sprinters.
So, as the peloton charge down the left bank, they've got to get over the bank at some stage here. And the sprinters now have got so many good sprinters here. Peter Sagan, who's not a pure sprinter but a very strong man, is likely to have to engage now with Andre Greipel and Brian Cocker. The red jerseys down there, the second red jerseys, are in fact Team BMC, who are looking modern. There they are, briefly, the black boys in red. And TJ's the centre face there. He lost a few seconds yesterday. It cost him the second place overall currently in the Tour, but with the Alps ahead, who knows what will happen over the last week of this Tour de France. It is again, after today, a climber's tour.
So, after just looking at the pictures of the peloton 2 seconds ago, I saw Michael Matthews right next to Froome. He's right on his right shoulder, right just behind the yellow jersey of Chris Froome. And he hasn't been in a sprint basically since his crash. So he's not on the cards of nobody. Nobody thinks about him. He might surprise a few guys. If he catches the right wheel, he's sitting right next to Peter Sagan and Froome. He wants to have a go today. Nobody thinks about him. He might be the joker for today.
Yeah, well, Jens, I was just thinking a little earlier, because of the fact that a lot of these sprinters are taking their last possible sprint for a week or so, do you think this is going to be a bit of a dangerous sprint? I do.
Well, we can look at it as like the last big test for the sprinter finale in Paris. I mean, it's their last chance to actually have a bunch kick, have a bunch sprint before Paris. So yes, they for sure all gonna go for it. But I believe it's largely big roads, and everybody knows this place by now after 2 weeks of racing. It will be fast, but it should be fairly safe and all right for everybody.
Well, let's hope it is. There's nothing more exciting than an absolutely fair mass sprint finish, is there? And as the peloton still try to get their positions booked in the race for the line, let's check in again inside the race with Steve Perino. Steve.
Well, Phil, as you were talking with Jens about safety and crashes happening, I happened to have a conversation with EDIC's team doctor, who has run an analysis over the last 13 years of the Tour de France, and he says the first week of the Tour de France, the average crash rate is 1.9 crashes per rider. That's just any level of touching down. The first week this year actually was lower at 1.7. By the end of the Tour, it tends to be 2.7, but it's actually been lower this year at 2.2. And he had a few insights as to how they've worked with that information to figure out how to ride safer. He says you want to go into a turn, the outside always faster, inside always safer. But if you're going to take the outside, don't be the last on the outside. Otherwise, you end up in the gutter.
You're getting me nervous now.
BMC.
We've just passed under 10 kilometres to go, and it's indicating that the chase of Mark Cavendish is about 5 kilometres behind. That doesn't 10 kilometres behind, rather. As we look now at Team BMC, trying to just keep their man TJ Van Garderen safe. The same must be said of Team Sky, looking after the rider in yellow. But there is definitely a move by Orica Greenedge, the Australian setup, to try and give Michael Matthews a chance.
Yes, well, there certainly is, Phil, but I think it's amazing to see the way Team BMC are riding. They're riding solidly at the front end of the main field, and even though TJ Van Garderen might have lost a place yesterday, dropping down to 3rd place in the overall standings, I think over the next part of the Tour de France, he's moving into a phase at a range of mountains that I think really suits him. He's got that big diesel engine, and he's still nurturing a hope of trying to improve on his position in the standings at the moment. That's why his team is riding so solidly at the front end of the peloton to keep him safe. They are laying down the foundations to make this race and this approach to the finish line as safe as possible.
About 2 kilometres now from our right swing, and then we'll cross the River Rhone and head into Valence for the finish, which should be around the 7-kilometre banner. Well, BMC have got control of the head. As they do that, Michael Matthews in the white jersey, I'll point him out as soon as we get a front shot, he's also moving up. And Michael crashed in the opening week, remember, the only one who crashed that day who didn't retire from the Tour. So let's go back inside the race again with Steve Perino. We're heading to cross the Rhone now, Steve.
I just had a 5-second, 40-mile-an-hour conversation with the director of Orca Greenedge, Matt White. He told me this morning, no way that Matthews was going to go for it, but he said he's feeling good, and he said there's no reason not to try. So far, every day it seems that the Orca Greenedge guy he says is going to go, it turns out to be someone else. Crafty man, that Mr. White.
He certainly is. I've known him for many years. But Michael Matthews, who was last man in the Tour de France after that crash for 10 days, said he didn't like being last, and he's now 6th from last. He's had 2 very good days. Let's check in now with Steve Schlanger at the finish line.
And Phil, playing off what Steve Perino talked about a few moments ago about the crash rate and also what kind of turn you want to make on that final right-hand bend inside the last K, outside or inside. One of the things the sprint team directors told me earlier is they're afraid that a lot of guys are going to try and bite things off, get to that inside, and that's what, in what Paul was talking about, could make it so dangerous. Guys not wanting to go to the outside because it's longer, trying to squeeze through on the inside. That's where they're worried about the most crashes leading into this sprint coming up.
It's Rowan Dennis on the front for Team BMC, who won the time trial in Utrecht.
Christoph.
Well, we're looking at the long straight Rome. The temperature continues to climb. It's now 33 degrees Celsius, about 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And now they split, Paul. BMC on the left and Chris Froome's Sky on the right.
Yeah, well, all of these riders from the overall contenders just trying to keep themselves out of danger. It looks to me like there's a little move. It looks like Jan Bartov.
That would be his move, wouldn't it, for Trek? But he's gone down the left-hand side of the road, and now it is Jan Bartov, this. Late move. This is a typical Jens Voigt move, isn't it, Jens?
Well, he definitely gives it a go, and I mean, you know, 4 miles to go, 6.5 kilometers. If, for example, now the BMC team goes, look, we don't need to chase him because we don't have a sprinter in case they don't want to go for Van Avermaet. They can ease up, and if they want to get him 20 seconds, 30 seconds, yes, he might be able to do it.
Jensi, watch out, because the world champion has just made a move. I can just see from the high altitude here that the white jersey of the world champion, Michael Kwiatkowski's gone right over the top of that move.
And he's gone past him. He's put him back in the pack here. Well, that's a very brave move. I'm not sure that's going to work either. The peloton aren't going to be robbed of a sprint here.
It's a little...
Well, the music, seeing the riders drowning out, Jens, there, as we're watching here. Team BMC, I'm not sure what their plan is, Paul. Why are they driving like this?
Well, the only reason they can be doing this is just to make it nice and safe running into town. They know that once they get to the 3-kilometer point, if there's any mechanical incident, any accident for TJ Van Garderen, he'll get the same time as everybody else. And you can see just a little bit further back the patience of Team Lotto Soudal in the red jersey. They're just waiting for the moment to take over control. They're waiting for the moment when they feel they've got enough firepower to get Andre Greipel into the finishing line. One man that they'll be missing, though, I have to say, is Greg Henderson. I'm sure is watching this at home. He had to retire from the race from injury.
Well, at the moment, Jens, we've got Damiano Caruso setting the pace for BMC. The whole team's up here. Maybe you can throw some light on it.
Well, only thing I can see being logic here is that they're trying to have a stage win, trying to for a sprint for Van Avermaet, because it's way too much work just to keep TJ safe. That's more work than Team Sky is doing. So let's see what they come up with.
All right, well, Greg Van Avermaet, we've seen him win and in Rodez, and he could win here. He is a good sprinter, Paul.
Well, he's in good form. We saw him get that victory just a couple of days ago. I'm not really sure that he's the kind of sprinter who can rival guys like Andre Greipel, but after a hard day, it really is always quite strange how a sprint can unfold. But you're looking at some of the top sprinters in the world here. You're looking at Andre Greipel, John Degenkolb, Alexander Kristoff, but maybe that's exactly what Greg Van Avermaet wants to do for Team BMC.
We're inside, 4.5 kilometres to go to the line. Remember, just 300 metres from it, there's a tricky roundabout, and we take the inside. Well, Team BMC have had a great Tour de France so far. They've won 3 stages, and they've got TJ Van Garderen sitting high in the overall. So they're feeling confident that they have the winner today.
Well, they're feeling confident. You've got TJ Van Garderen, though, still sitting in 3rd position. I think all he's thinking about is safety and keeping himself to the front of the main field. And now there's, you can see over on the right-hand side, you've also got up there the yellow jersey of Chris Froome, the green jersey of Peter Sagan, the white jersey of Quintana moving up. All of the overall contenders, they're trying to defend their position, making sure they don't get caught in an accident. They've got about 0.8 of a kilometre to go to get to the 3-kilometre point, where if they have any mechanicals or any accidents, they'll be safely home and given the same time as everybody else. But it's still Team BMC. I keep looking back there. There is Greg Van Avermaet from BMC. His head's bobbing around there, keeping a close eye on everybody else. But now's the moment when you've got to hold your position as we start to line up. This is Daniel Oss on the front.
As they continue to go a little bit of a gap here. Now that looks very, look, I might be Stiebar who's made a move here. He's done it before, as he's made a little shoot away from the bunch. He's got 3.3 kilometres, and looking at the peloton, he's caught them off guard again. As we continue, they've taken out that roundabout. That's a nice move, a nice smooth crossing there. 3.2. Once we go through 3, all the riders will get the same time. That's good news for the leaders of the Tour.
Well, now all of a sudden Lotto Soudal have said, oh, we made a little bit of a tactical error here at 3 kilometres to go. We need to really wind this up. Zdeněk Stybar, a phenomenal rider when it comes to cyclocross. He's already had himself a stage victory in the Tour de France, and you might just have noticed the speed there, Phil, 55 kilometres an hour. is what he's charging along at. But there's not very many men can do this kind of an effort over the last 3 kilometers of a race. He's got to keep the pressure on here for around about 3.5 minutes.
He won in Le Havre up a steep hill when the leaders of the Tour all fell around him. He popped out the winner, and of course it led to the final abandonment of the second yellow jersey of the Tour de France, his teammate Tony Martin. He's anybody can hold these people up. It is him. If they allow just a moment's relaxation and don't take up the chase, he'll be gone.
Well, that's what he counts on when he makes a move like that. He counts on a little bit of disorganization. I noticed Peter Sagan was right up onto the back wheel there of John Degenkolb.
Well, he looks to see where they are. He knows now he's totally committed. It's win or lose. That's the way it is now for him. 2.2 kilometers to go. It's going to be tight.
Well, it's about 7 seconds the advantage, and all he can hope for is there's a bit of disorganization comes here. We're down to 2 riders now leading out to Christoph. That was the rider in the red and white jersey as they go inside of 2 kilometers to go.
Well, he's now looking for one, and that'll be the yellow kite in the road. We're coursing right down the main street here in Valence now. It is a very good approach. It is a pure sprint, and they know it now as they try to organize the sprint, and they're being disrupted by the attack of the Zdeněk Štýbar.
Well, Christoph is third wheel. Behind him is André Greipel. Behind him in the green jersey is Sagan. It looks very much as if it's all over bar the shouting.
Well, I'll tell you what, the white jersey in the centre of the pack under the tree, that's Michael Matthews, who seems to be recovering from his broken bones. As they're closing in now, it's Christoph's team trying to close them down. The green jersey note, 4th down in that line, is Peter Sagan.
Well, Sagan is just trying to freelance a little bit, watching how the other riders in front of him are going to sort out the sprint. Štýbar is going to get caught before they get to the final kilometre. He sat up, he made the effort, puts his hand up. Really is a warning to the other riders, Phil, that he's going backwards, because this can always be very, very dangerous.
And a counter move again. Is they're going to be preoccupied at 1 kilometre to go here. This is going to be another move, but they're on him this time. Katusha are there. Christoph is locked in. Behind is André Greipel. Then comes the green jersey. These are all the riders. Degenkolb is there, and Michael Matthews in the white jersey is also there.
And on Michael Matthews' wheel is Edvald Bosenhagen. Moving up, you've got the Cofidis team as well. They've got a good lead-out man, Geoffroy Soupé. Maybe he's going to have a crack here this afternoon as he gets a little bit further forward. And now you can see the heads are moving, but I have to think that Christoph is right up. He's too close to the front.
500 metres to go now. He's in the perfect position, the best he's ever been to win the stage. 18 wins and nothing in the Tour. He's the second left rider in white as they make that turn on the inside. Through the inside they go. Now Christoph doesn't want to go just yet, but he's going to have to try. Serge Powell's at the front, but now they break on the right as André Greipel goes. Degenkolb is trying desperately. Can Greipel make it 3? Degenkolb is giving it everything as they race towards the line. Christoph is coming, Sagan is coming, and André Greipel takes it on the line. He makes it 3, and he is all smiles. He is proving every time, Paul, he is the best sprinter of the Tour.
Just have a look at this one more time. The power, it's a very, very long sprint for André Greipel. His compatriot from Germany on the right-hand side, John Degenkolb, is coming. But all of a sudden, it seems as if Greipel has got the lunge for the line. It's going to be very close for second and third as the Katusha rider is coming forward. And Phil, what an impressive ride there by Peter Sagan. Second place to Degenkolb, third place to Christoph, and fourth place to Peter Sagan.
The best sprinters all. Phew, what a great sprint that was. And, we don't see Andre smile very much, but this is a magic Tour for him. 3 wins now. And after he also had stitches in his crash, now he's back on top. He showed us his race. He really has come on a bomb. He's a terrific sprinter now. Let's have a look at that again. Just look at the power, and just look how Degenkolb is really wrestling that bike to try and find that extra power that will give him the win. In the end.